most of us in America have heard of Greenwich Mean Time, but in fact, France published maps with 0-degree longitude running through Paris, and Chinese maps showed Beijing as the prime meridian. So why then did it take us until the late 19th century? Well, think about the invention and expansion of railroads in this period. People began to realize that they needed to develop some standardized time zones. Because in North America, for example, regional and national railroad companies use different clocks. On the accompanying PowerPoint slide, you see a circle there. You can't read it, so I'm going to give it to you to read it myself because I think it's interesting. This is an 1857 railroad timetable with the following preamble, quote, "There is no standard railroad time in the United States or Canada, but each railroad company adopts independently the time of its own locality or the place at which its principal office is situated. The inconvenience of such a system, if a system it can be called, that emphasis mine, must be apparent to all, but is most annoying to persons strangers to the fact." You can imagine that if you have different times as shown here, for example, they use DC as the point for this timetable. The slides disappeared there. Noon here was 12:24 p.m. in Boston, 12:11 in Newark, New Jersey, and 11:48 in Pittsburgh. So imagine being a railroad passenger in one town trying to figure out timing for your travel and when you might arrive. So obviously the system was untenable, and most railroad companies in the US and Canada decided to adopt a new railway standard time. As usual, there were a lot of people involved, but their primary coordinator and advocate was William Allen, a former railroad engineer and then publisher of transportation timetables, who was chosen by the railway industry to devise a standardized time zone map for North America. On Sunday, November 18th, 1883, standard railway time went into effect. So how did they synchronize this? Well, to communicate the significant moment of synchronization, a telegraph signal was sent by the US Naval Observatory here in Washington, DC, which had initiated a national time service in 1877. They sent a telegraph signal to the Western Union headquarters in New York City, which then sent out telegraph communications to the rest of the country. For inventing the worldwide time zone system, credit often goes to Sanford Fleming, a chief engineer of the Canadian Pacific Railway. Around 1876, he came up with a system that started with the prime meridian passing through Greenwich and then divided up the day into 24 hours, rather than the two 12-hour designations using AM and PM for 24 time zones around the world. And I'd like to point out that's his pocket watch in the upper left. It's hard to see, but if you get a chance, we'll have this in the newsletter as well. It shows the 24-hour time system. In October 1884, a group of diplomats and technical specialists gathered, yes, here in Washington, D.C., for an international meridian conference to try to standardize time zones across the globe, like the 24-hour time system Fleming had suggested. And so they decided they would divvy it up, starting with the prime meridian at, yes, Greenwich, count longitude east and west from the prime meridian up to 180 degrees in each direction, and adopt a universal day beginning at Greenwich at midnight. However, of course, this nice international conference had no actual authority to enforce this plan, and so it took a while for it to come into being. In fact, the US government didn't officially adopt even a national standardized time zone until Congress passed the Standard Time Act of March 19th, 1918. So it's only been a little over 100 years that we've had a standardized time zone here. And that's when the nation's 5 time zones were proclaimed: Eastern, Central, Mountain, Pacific, and Alaska. The act also included a provision for daylight saving time, and it is saving, singular, not savings, plural. DST had been enacted first on a countrywide scale, actually by Germany, on April 30th, 1916, in an effort to conserve energy during World War I, and some other countries followed suit. It was an unpopular move in the US, and it was repealed soon after the war, but then readopted by Congress during World War II. In 2007, DST rules in the US were updated to increase DST by about a month, now starting the second Sunday of March at 2 a.m. local time and ending the first Sunday of November at 2 a.m. local time. So that'll be November 6th this year. And today, the US states of Hawaii and Arizona, except the Navajo Nation, plus the US territories still do not observe DST. Earlier this year, you may have noted the US Senate unanimously passed legislation that would make daylight saving time permanent in the US. But as of writing this talk, it remains unclear if the House of Representatives will take this up. So personally, I'm not a big fan of daylight saving time, which ends this year on November 6th. However, when I travel back and forth across time zones, as I will do again this weekend, I will think of and thank the people who advocated for and eventually influenced world governments to adopt a shared international 24-hour time zone that we can all rely on. So thank you.